Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we simplify the college planning process for our families. I'm Kristin Clark. I am a career exploration coach for 16 to 25-year-olds, helping them figure out not only the right career, but the right college major if that's the path that they want to go down. I'm here with Bobby Hood. Bobby is our SAT, ACT test prep guru. And Bobby, we're going to talk about all things ACT today. Well, at least all things science.
Absolutely, yeah. So this current series that we're doing is called "Hard Things Are Not That Hard," and that is, how you could just describe my whole tutoring process, right? Which is these tests seem so intimidating and difficult, right? But they really aren't as hard as they seem, and so today we're going to talk about the ACT science test, right? And so I think this will be kind of fun because I know a lot of people are scared of the ACT because they're like, oh, I'm not very good at science, or I haven't taken enough science classes, right?
Or I'm not good at testing.
Or I'm just not a good test taker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the trick is that you really don't need to know any science. You don't really need to be good at science. You don't have to have taken the time.
And Bobby's going to take you through a few different things, a few different questions, so that you can see how this isn't that hard.
Absolutely. So let's just dive into that. So I'm going to pull up here on the screen. So here's this is a typical ACT science question. Now, when you look at this, and I know, Kristin, you haven't taken any science classes lately, right?
No.
Okay. So here's a question, right, that appears on the ACT. And the thing with the ACT science test, similar to the ACT reading test, is it's all just a word matching puzzle. You don't need to know anything. You don't need to think of anything. You just need to word match things, right? So like this question, you don't even, when you try to read it, it's so dense. It would make your head hurt to try to read and think about this question, right?
Right.
But so don't read the question. Just look at the question and say, okay, this thing, where is it telling us to look? Well, you see it mentions table 1, right?
Right. And it's you're looking for the smallest value possible, right?
Right. And so when you look at table 1, and if you just match words, there are only 2 words that appear in table 1 that also appear in that question. What are those 2 words?
Density and resistivity.
Yeah, density and whatever that is. Yeah, that thing there, right? And so these words match. Okay. And then as you already said, right, we're looking for the smallest value possible.
All right, and Bobby, I'll tell you how I would do this, and you tell me if I'm crazy. But I think I'd look at this and I'd go aluminum, and instead of doing the math for 2.7 and 2.65, I'd probably just go 3 times 3 is 9.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Exactly. And so you say, okay,
2 is 18.
Right. Absolutely. And so then you just pick and say, okay, what does it look like? Yeah.
Well, 2 times 19 right there, and silver. Yeah. So it's gold.
And so. Yeah, so this one would be like 9, right? What would gold be?
Gold
19 times 2, so that'd be like 38 or something, right? So the answer is aluminum because it's just 9, right? It's the smallest one.
Oh yeah. I went for
that's it.
Bobby. Yep. There you go. I went
exactly. See, and right. So you go through all of them and you say, oh, that one is the smallest one. Yeah. And so then let's look at another one. Okay, look at this question. Again, this question says, which of the following pieces of equipment was used to collect the data that were averaged in figures 1, 2? That sounds like something you should think about, right? But instead, if you just word match, there's only 1 word on this figure. There are only 6 words on the figure. And the only word that matches is average, right?
Yeah.
So the data that were averaged, well, I guess is whatever this is, the number of Ephipia hatched, whatever that is, right?
Right.
Okay, so what is an Ephipia? I don't know what Ephipia are because I haven't read anything. You don't need to read anything. You just need to word match. But you go and look at the paragraph at the top of the page, right? Which is here below. There's the word Ephipia, right? And so what does it say Ephipia are? Well, they are eggs that are laid by some creature called the Moina mycura. But what does it describe this Moina mycura as? It is a microscopic crustacean.
All right.
So what sort of equipment should we use to count the eggs of this creature? Which of those 4 things should we use to look at a microscopic creature?
A microscope.
A microscope, right? So you see that this is a word matching test. and that it leads you from here to here, right, to the word amphibia, right? And you just like match through it. Isn't
Well,
that
and really,
funny?
Bobby, like on this, the chart, really, you
Mhm.
don't even need the chart.
Exactly. The chart was literally just to get the word amphibia out of, right? This is a reading test. It's not a science test, right? The answers are just sitting there waiting for you, right? And so the whole test works like this, right? It's just lots of, very simple, straightforward things that's just word matching, right? So
Well,
let's look
and
at like,
Bobby,
oh, yeah,
so
go ahead.
we've talked about this. I get like wigged out when I'm timed on stuff.
Mhm.
So what you're really showing us is that if you go in here thinking about the logic of this, it goes a
Mhm.
lot faster too, and you can get through the test faster.
Oh, absolutely. Here, let's look at one more. Okay, I'm going to add one more question in here. Okay, let's look at one more here. Okay, so look at this question. This certainly looks like something that you would need to think about, right?
Oh, yeah,
And this just looks so complicated,
yeah.
right? Okay, so if you go look at step 3, it doesn't help you any on answering this question. Step 3 just says 3 milliliters of something was added to a flask. But do you see somewhere in this passage something that says what happens when OFIN interacts with things?
Yeah, up at the top.
Okay, it
When it
says
actually
OFIN,
with Fe2 plus.
okay, to form an orange colored complex. Okay, so what's the answer to this question?
Interacted with Fe. Yeah, so you're reading.
This is a reading test, right? But everyone misses this question because they go look at step 3 and they can't, and they just think about what the answer ought to be, right? But
Right.
the answer was up there in the intro paragraph. And it
Yes.
just says it. There is no thinking, right? It's just, oh, it said that, right?
Yeah, so it's the science pass. So I can see where I would be afraid of the science piece, right? Because I was never
Absolutely,
great at science.
right?
This is easy. Keep going.
It is
Show me another
absolutely.
one.
Well, it's like this. Here's the scariest thing
I think I
that
could rock this test.
exactly right, and that's what my students say. We're going through things, right? This is the scariest thing I've ever seen on an ACT. Look at this figure that has all this stuff about expression patterns of a gene and coding regions of it. This looks so intimidating and complicated, right?
Right. So
But
based on the
again,
results of experiment 2,
mhm,
RS2 turns on the expression of GFP reporter gene in which of the cell types?
yeah,
I'm looking for RS2.
yeah.
Okay, so that's the third little thing down.
Right now, the 5th row says RS1 and RS2. Should we look at that?
No.
No, because we should look at the one that says RS2, right?
Right.
Not it didn't say anything about RS1. Okay,
So
and
that's
so
D,
then you
E, and
want
F.
cell types are D, E, and F. The answer to this is D, E, and F, right? That's all it is. And the thing is, like, you could sit there and think about it all you want, but like everything in the science test can be answered in, like about 30 seconds.
So really,
So,
Bobby, you
yeah.
don't really need to know science.
You do not need to know any science at all. Now, there are 1 or 2 questions on each test. Well, 2 or 3 questions that would ask something that you do need to know some science, like this thing has a pH of 8. Is it an acid or a base? Now
Okay.
that you just have to know that rule, but there's only 3 questions out of the 40 that are like that. And
Right.
that is
And
and that's a thing that most students would know because that is
Okay.
something that you would learn in junior high science classes, right? But
That's
other than
awesome,
that, other
because
than
I don't
those
know
3,
that.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't if I hadn't, currently looked it up because of the test, right? But yeah, the other than those 3 questions, everything is just word matching like I just showed you. It's just word match and let it lead you to finding numbers or words and tables. Now, the ones I showed were like some of the other questions were like that first one we did, you just go to the table and you pull numbers out of it, right? But then other ones you go and match words in the text. And that's all the test is. And so this is why you should not fear the ACT just because it has science on it, right? Because it's just reading, it's just like the reading test, just match things up. And
Right.
that's it. And that's the whole story. It seems hard, but hard things aren't that hard once you realize what they're really doing. And that's it. And next week we will continue looking at other parts of the ACT.
Awesome. Bobby, this
That's
was
it.
really I love this because
It's
I
fun.
love puzzles. So that was like I was like, wow, that is actually fun for me. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And that's the whole point is that it can actually be fun.
Awesome. All
All
right.
right. Well, that's great. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Bobby. We love what you do for the kids.
Bye.